Time is 5:30 p.m. in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code Chapter 551. This meeting is officially open with a quorum present. The following board members are present virtually, and I will now call on each of their names in the order of their districts. I believe we have District 2, Toby Jackson.
Good evening, President Ramos. Toby Jackson, President, representing District 2.
Awesome. Good to see you and good to have you on board today. District 3, Quentin Phillips.
Good evening, President Ramos. Quentin Phillips, representing District 3.
Thank you. District 4, Trustee Daphne Brookins, I believe, is not going to be able to join us tonight. Neither is District 5, Trustee CJ Evans. We will move on to District 6, Trustee Andar.
Good evening, President Ramos. Trustee Andar, representing District 6.
Good to see you and good to have you with us tonight as well. District 7, Trustee Norman Robbins.
Good evening, President Ramos. Norman Robbins, representing District 7 here.
Good to see you too, Mr. Trustee Robbins. Has District 8 Trustee Anael Luevanos been able to join us? I don't think he's logged in yet. District 9 Trustee Ashley Paz. She is not logged in yet either, so.
She actually is logged in. She's muted.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Ashley Paz, representing District 9. I'm here.
Okay, good deal. Good to have you. And I am Jacinto Ramos Jr., representing District 1. On March 16, 2020, Governor Abbott temporarily suspended certain open meetings requirements imposed by the Open Meetings Act to slow the spread of COVID-19. This action permits meetings subject to the Open Meetings Act to be hosted by telephone or video conference. This meeting is being broadcasted live via Spectrum Charter Channel 192. The forward that is the Ed TV channel on YouTube by searching for YouTube, FWISD Ed TV, and the link provided in the agenda. In accordance with those suspended rules, we certify the following. Notice of this meeting has been posted online for at least 72 hours. Although members of the board are not gathered in a central physical location, we do have a quorum in attendance at this meeting by video conference or telephone call. We are meeting by use of Zoom software application, which allows two-way communication for members of the public. As we would at any in-person meeting, members of the public who have followed the instructions on the meeting notice for registering to speak during the public comment portion will be unmuted for 3 minutes to speak. All other meeting procedures will adhere to board-adopted procedures to the extent practicable. An audio recording of this meeting is being made and will be available to the public at a later date. We apologize in advance for any unforeseeable difficulties and ask for your patience as we navigate these unprecedented times. If you have questions about these suspended laws, please call the Office of the Attorney General at 888-672-6787 or by email at toma@oag.tx.gov. We will now move on to our pledges, which will be led by Mr. Clint Bond.
Thank you, President Ramos. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, indivisible. Thank you, President Ramos.
Thank you, Mr. Bond. At this time, we will now hear public comment. Let me remind you that because of the restrictions by the Texas Open Meetings Act, board members may not engage in a verbal exchange about a subject that has not been posted. We will listen and take notes, but the board is prohibited from responding to any inquiries made during a board meeting on any topic not posted on the agenda. However, the board may reply with 1, a statement of specific factual information given in response to the inquiry, 2, recitation of existing policy in response to the inquiry, or 3, direct a person to visit with staff about the issue. While the board listens to concerns of a general nature, speakers should refrain from mentioning names of individual employees or public officers during their comments. Any employee, parent, or other member of the public is asked to comply with the appropriate grievance policy to a complaint heard pursuant to the applicable board policy. No presentation may exceed 3 minutes unless the speaker has prior approval for additional time because of the use of a translator. Speakers who require the assistance of a translator are permitted double the allotted time of speakers who do not require the assistance of a translator. Furthermore, a speaker may not relinquish his or her time to another speaker. I ask that you please observe these rules for the purpose of effectively accomplishing the business of the meeting in a timely manner. Because we are utilizing an online platform, all speakers will be announced to speak in the order in which they signed up. Mr. Clint Bond will announce the speaker's name, and at that time, his or her microphone will be unmuted for 3 minutes. Before making your comment, state your name and then proceed with your comment. At the end of 3 minutes, your microphone will be muted by Mr. Bond. Mr. Bond, will you please call on the first speaker?
Yes, President Ramos. Our first speaker this evening is John Holdridge. Mr. Holdridge, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me?
You may begin,
Thank you.
sir.
I'm John Holdridge. I live in Fort Worth on the east side. I graduated from Carter Riverside in 1963, and my 5 children graduated from Fort Worth high schools. We're all brought to tears and outraged by the video of George Floyd's murder at the hands of a police officer, and many were moved to action. And I must confess that my silence is a form of prejudice, and I repent of that. So I would like to speak clearly and positively about the issue of racism we face in our country. This goes back 400 years when slavery was introduced into our land. We've made great progress, but there is still much to do. But first, what is the cause of all this anger, rage, and hatred? It is partially institutional, but most of all, I think the cause is evil in the world. If you believe the Bible, you know who the author of evil is. Satan is the father of lies and all evil. In the Bible, Jesus said, "In the world you have trouble, but I have overcome the world." Not someday, but now. The Bible also says that God is love, and love is the only thing that can defeat evil. Our attitudes and behaviors can be changed only by love. We can make all evil behavior illegal, but that won't change our hearts. However, I'm encouraged by some of the things I see on the TV news. I'd like to share just 2 that you've probably seen yourself. Recall the 5-year-old black girl who asked the policeman, "Are you going to shoot me?" He knelt down beside her and said, "No, little girl, I'm not going to harm you. I'm here to protect you. I love you." Then I saw an interview of that father shortly after that, and he said his perception of police had changed at that moment when he saw love demonstrated. And recall the court scene at the end of the trial for Amber Geiger, the policewoman who was convicted of killing Botham Jean in his apartment in Dallas. Botham's brother, after the trial, went over to this convicted fellow. He hugged her and he forgave her. Not to say that what she did to his brother was okay, because it wasn't. This he did for himself, for his healing, to release his anger. And recall the black female judge who came down off her bench and embraced her and loved her and gave her a Bible. This is love. In some cases, that's undeserved love, but that's how God loves us. So let's start listening to each other with love in our hearts, and maybe we can make this world a better place. And thank you for listening.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker is Emmeline Sota. Emmeline Sota, are you there? Emmeline Sota, are you there?
Yes.
You may begin speaking.
Okay. My name is Emmeline Soto. Thank you, Superintendent and the board. I'm a high school student and a female rugby player. FWISD has had at least 5 years to determine what and how to add a new female varsity sport. I remind the board that it had no problem funding powerlifting during the same 5-year period. Yet, girls rugby continues to face hurdle after hurdle to become a varsity sport despite having vastly more female participants than powerlifting ever had or currently has. We are disappointed in the Executive Athletic Director's response to our email sent in April. His letter only reinforces the apparent lack of earnestness by upper leadership to address years of Title IX violations and extra and co-curricular athletic programming. In no way is increasing the number of female volleyball teams at the sub-varsity level, specifically freshman teams, even close to bringing equivalent to creating additional varsity opportunities and experiences. We know that the district's high school sports interest survey was repeatedly delayed through 2018, pushing its implementation into 2019. It had to be repeated and was only done so after an extensive explanation of Office of Civil Rights expectations. We do not accept the executive AD statement that a committee still needs to be formed for obtaining a student's voice, determining criteria to introduce new sports, providing professional learning for coaches, budgeting, forecasting, and building female interest before an announcement can be made. What happened to the committees that were supposed to have already been formed? We know that the district already did a financial analysis 2 years ago on adding rugby as a varsity sport. Then at the request of FWISD Legal Services, documentation was submitted in March verifying sufficient female students' interest to field teams at a majority of high schools. In April, we sent you a list of rugby organizations from the college to the national level that are more than willing to mentor any new coaches. In case you didn't know, Dallas has a professional franchise competing in Major League Rugby. These organizations are all about supporting rugby in our community through coaching clinics and the like. Thank you, and we hope you decide to do the right thing.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Cielo Alvarez. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
You may begin speaking.
Thank you, Superintendent and the board. I am Cielo Alvarez, a high school student and a female rugby player. June 23rd is the anniversary of Title IX. On that date, the board votes on next year's operating budget. We hope Fort Worth ISD will not miss this opportunity to show leadership and gender equality by ensuring there is meaningful funding to add rugby as a female varsity sport this fall. It would be a travesty to see a continual violation by the district of this landmark law in its athletic and educational programming. Athletics is not simply an extracurricular activity. It is an integrated part of the curriculum offered to students as an elective course, just like the arts, languages, and CTE. It would be a horrible mockery to young females that their voices are being heard but not worthy for action, given that 5 of 9 trustees on the school board are now women. And is this really the message the district wants to send, particularly to females of color, given the current social unrest we've been experiencing? Institutional leaders, including leaders of education, are failing to correct past and current practices that, in this case, flagrantly continue a sexist message that females are less able and less worthy than their male peers. Female students deserve a full athletic curriculum that includes a full contact sport on par with football. To deny us from learning and competing in a tackle sport like rugby is the same as saying girls aren't welcome in STEM or CTE courses like construction, welding, or automotive. Thank you, and we hope to celebrate good news June 23rd.
Thank you. And our final speaker for this evening is Robert Rogers. You may begin your comments.
Thank you. It's nice to see faces of the board. I wish we were all together in a room. The Fort Worth ISD Racial Equity Committee was established in February of 2016. Quoting from its website, the goal of the district's commitment to racial equity is to build a deep and common understanding of the impact of institutionalized racism and equity, specifically racial equity, on student achievement. I'd like to share third grade reading proficiency data with you, with a particular emphasis on how institutionalized racism in the district has an ongoing, pervasive, and unchanging negative impact on student achievement. In every year since 2012, there has been a 40% difference in reading proficiency between white and Black students. White students at 60%, Black students at 20%, every single year. The Racial Equity Committee began its work in 2016. Reading proficiency for Black students has not changed in the 3 years since its formation. In those 3 years alone, we sent 3,560 Black students to fourth grade lacking the ability to read well enough to predict success. It is not enough to study racism. Changes need to occur immediately. You as a board make financial decisions every single meeting that significantly impact the structure of institutionalized racism in the district. I ask you to keep one simple question in your mind as you make each of these financial decisions. Is this more important than teaching our Black students to read? Thank you.
And that concludes our comments for this evening, President Ramos.
Thank you, Mr. Bond. Thank you all for sharing your thoughts this evening. We'll now move on to reports and presentations about the 2020-2021 budget adoption. Dr. Scribner, would you like to introduce this presentation?
Yes, thank you, President Ramos. We're going to continue our conversation that we began in the last board meeting. And at this time, I'd like to call on our Chief Financial Officer, Mike Ball, to begin this presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Scribner, and thank you, President Ramos and trustees. It's a privilege to speak with you again about a little update regarding our budget adoption. And so if we could go to the next slide, we'll kind of let's go to the next slide, and we'll talk about briefly about just kind of what our hope is to talk about tonight. We want to give you an update on where we are in terms of the current conversations related to state funding and federal funding that have changed. There have been a couple of changes since the last time we spoke. There is a required discussion that is a compliance issue related to a state mandated change in the way property values are used in school district budgeting. And then we want to give you an update on the requirements for publication of the board meeting at which the board will consider the budget, which is 2 weeks from tonight. And then we'll talk about next steps. So if we could go to the next slide. Related to state funding, we talked the last time we had an update here that the major driver of state funding is on-site average daily attendance. That's what the current funding system has been built on really for a generation or longer. And that is dictated by actual on-site attendance by students and then adjusted for their instructional setting. And up until this year, property values have had an impact on the district's budget each year. And so, and to some extent, for some districts, they still do, but we'll talk about that on another slide. But the current system in Texas does not provide funding for online learning. We did talk about that last time, but that's one of the areas where there's been a change, and at least in the conversation. So if we could go to the next slide. We are hearing some conversations, and this has been the change since the last time we spoke. There are some conversations happening at the administrative level in state agency, in the Texas Education Agency, about how could the agency administer a funding system that would provide funding for districts that are providing remote instruction. And there's a couple of different conversations going on there about different types of online instruction and different mixes of online instruction combined with on-site instruction, and then there's talk about just on-site instruction with appropriate social distancing. So the good news to report is that in each of those scenarios, there at least are some conversations happening about how that could be done. And we don't yet have a final report to give to you about what that may look like. The good news is that for the first time in my career, there are actually conversations going on about how districts could be funded for providing online instruction. So that's good news that we have to report to you. So if we could go to the next slide. And this is the required conversation that we need to have with the board in order to be in compliance with state law. And that is we're obligated to communicate to the board in a public meeting that there has been a change in the way property values are handled for state funding. Up until the passage of House Bill 3 and Senate Bill 2 in the last legislative session, again, for a generation or longer, the state funding system in Texas has been based on attendance and the prior year's property values. And so districts that were, such as Fort Worth ISD, where the property values were increasing, could actually use the local tax revenue generated by that increase in values, and it would increase the available revenues, and it came to be known as lag revenue, LAG, just standing for the time lag involved in those property values. But the new legislation now requires us to use current year values, and so we will lose that lag revenue, and so we just need to communicate to the board that that's been the change, that is the change all across the state, and it does have a bit of a negative impact on our funding moving forward, but that is the law of the land as we sit here today. So if we could go to the next slide. In this, we showed this slide last time. This is the allocation for Fort Worth ISD of the federal funding for it's the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund, and it's based on the relative the ratio of students qualifying for compensatory education funding compared to the total in the state. And so our allocation is 29 million and some change there you see on the screen. It's important to note, and I think that if we could go to the next slide, it's important to note that will not be a benefit to Fort Worth ISD, that our state funding will be reduced by that amount. And so I was on a state funding update today as a part of a TASA summer conference where some state funding experts reiterated this, that they were cautioning leaders across the state, don't go spend this money assuming that it's going to be extra money. And so it will just offset our state funding for the current fiscal year, for the 1920 fiscal year. So we will need to be mindful of that, and we're making our budget projections accordingly. So if we could go to the next slide. This is a discussion just about the timeline for adopting the budget. And as one of our speakers mentioned, 2 weeks from tonight, we hope to have on the agenda for the board to consider the budget, to have a public hearing that's required, and actually consider and hopefully adopt the budget, which will allow us to have continuity of operations starting July 1. And there is a publication requirement that has to be in the local newspaper at least 10 days prior to the board meeting. So we need to have that publication or that notice of the meeting in the newspaper. And we've waited to do that because we were hopeful that we would know whether or not the governor is going to extend the declaration of emergency, so we could publish that meeting will be a Zoom meeting or an online meeting. And so we're going to just roll the dice a little bit and publish that as an electronic meeting, and because the declaration of emergency expires on the date that we need to have it published, on the 13th. And so if the governor says we have to meet in person, we may need to call a special meeting later, but we're hopeful that, and all indications are that he will extend that. But just know that as we sit here tonight, that's still a bit uncertain, and our plan is to publish the notice as an electronic meeting. So if we could go to the next slide. This one is the budget document itself, and this is what we showed you last time. There's been no changes to this document tonight, and we don't anticipate any. Based on these numbers, we've developed the notice that has to be in the newspaper, and we will recommend the board adopt this budget on the 23rd. And then our commitment is that we will continue to have a process to present some amendments to this document early in the fiscal year, so that this document really will be more than just a compliance document. It will be actually a guide for our operations as we move into to the next fiscal year. And if we could go to the next slide, one of the decisions that is still ahead of us, and the discussion that's still ahead of us, is the compensation plan for the 2020-2021 fiscal year. We did provide in the numbers that you just saw about $12 million that would provide for a 2% increase in compensation across the board. That's about $6 million per percentage point. And so that is a discussion that we will need to have after the budget adoption. But we did want to provide funding so that if the board chooses to go in that direction, the funding would be there. So the next slide talks about proposed next steps, and that would be the recommendation on the 23rd that the board adopt this budget. And then, as we just mentioned, we'll need to have a discussion at the board's pleasure about the compensation plan for the 2021 fiscal year. And then, as previously mentioned, we're committed to presenting some proposed amendments to this document early in the fiscal year that would make it more of a guiding document for us. And that concludes this update, President Ramos, and certainly I'd be pleased to entertain any questions the trustees might have at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Ball. Colleagues, if you have questions, I encourage you to click on the participants tab, and if you click on that, you'll see the feature raise hand on the bottom right. Looks like we have Trustee Andar with a question.
Thank you, President Ramos. Mr. Ball, thank you for this report. Is there a document or something showing I can see the 2020-2021 budget proposal. Is there anything that shows any changes that were made from the 2019-2020 school year to this school year so that we can compare the budget items?
It's a great question, Ms. Dar. We can certainly put that together. We don't have that included in tonight's presentation, but we certainly can do that and get it to the board prior to the 23rd. I think it is important in that context to remember that the way we developed this because of the network outage was we took the last complete fiscal year that we had, which was the year ended June 30, 2019, and we just adjusted for changes that we knew had occurred, like the board gave salary increases last summer for the current fiscal year. We've adjusted for known personnel changes that we know about, And we've provided the $12 million so that the board would have the option to talk about a salary increase next year. And so that's really kind of how we got to where we are. And our thinking is that the analysis on a department by department level in terms of increases and decreases would be part of that next step we talked about in presenting some amendments and proposed amendments to this document that would make it more of a guiding document. We need to get the board's priorities as well as priorities from the leadership team, and none of that have we done because of the network outage.
That data would be really helpful as I'm interpreting the proposed budget and needing to vote on that. It's nice to know where we have come from and where these numbers are coming from. So
we can
you.
Can certainly do that.
I appreciate that.
Okay. Next, we have Trustee Norman Robbins.
Thank you, President Ramos, and thank you, Mr. Ball. This keeping us up to date at this particular time is, I know, a challenge. In the past, we have adopted a very conservative approach to budgeting that has tended to, because of underspending, result in pretty good additions to our fund balance over the years. And I'm not sure that I've ever heard what your approach to that is. I've always felt that it would be better for us to try to take a more definite approach, a more specific approach to budgeting. I know at this particular time, because of our computer problems, that's not possible, but I'm curious about your approach to budgeting going forward. Do you take that same kind of very conservative approach, or do you try to get more specific in terms of what you think the actual expenditures are going to be?
Great question, Trustee Robbins. I think I see my role as trying to ascertain what the board's priorities are, because this really is the board's role to help guide us at the administrative level on how to allocate resources to support the priorities of the district. And so I think that's the first guiding principle for me. And of course, all of that is under the leadership of the superintendent. But the other thing I think that is important for me to remember and as needed to remind others that in the governmental arena, which we're in as a public school district, the budget document really serves two purposes. It serves as a governor, if you will, on our spending in the sense that we can't spend more than what's been appropriated in the budget. But it also is our authority to spend, and that's how I think in at least one significant way that the governmental budgets differ from our household budgets. Because while we may have a budget on a personal level that serves as a governor for our spending, we don't need that budget for authority to spend money. We may need some permission from someone else in our household, but we don't need a budget to authorize the spending. In the case of the school district, that's one of the reasons why we're calling this budget a compliance budget, because we, as an administrative staff, we don't have the authority to spend any money on July 1st unless a budget has been adopted by the board. So those are sort of conflicting objectives, because we want to have a governor on our spending, but if we overspend the budget at the functional level, then we have a compliance issue. So I see my role as trying to walk that tightrope between, we want to have a little bit of excess in the budget to avoid a compliance issue, which shows up in our audit report, gets reported to the Texas Education Agency. When the board president gets a letter, the superintendent gets a letter, and I get a letter on what we're going to do to prevent that from happening again. So that's I would like to find a balance between staying in compliance but not having so much excess in the budget that we lose credibility. So that's kind of how I see the function, of course, under the leadership of the board and the superintendent.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
I don't see any more hands. I think we may not have any more questions or comments from the board on the presentation. Dr. Scribb, do you have anything you needed to add?
No, thank you very much. We'll take those comments and questions and suggestions and work this through and be communicating with you via board update between now and the time we adopt the budget.
Okay, thank you, sir. We'll move on to number 5, the discussion of consent agenda items. As board president, I'm making the following statement in accordance with the board policy BBFA local. This is a reminder to all board members of the legal conflict of interest requirements and disclosure requirements you may have for matters under consideration on the agenda for this meeting. If required by law, board members shall recuse themselves from all discussion and shall abstain from voting on any matter pertaining to such a disclosure. Going on a consent agenda, do we have any questions concerning consent agenda items? And I'll call on each trustee just to ensure that everyone has an opportunity to ask questions about consent agenda. District 2 trustee Toby Jackson.
No questions, President Ramos.
Okay. District 3 trustee Quentin Phillips.
No questions.
Okay. District 6 trustee Andor.
I do have a question on, this is for Mr. Moore regarding B3, which is the QTEL professional development for teachers who are working with English learners. I think that that is a huge need, is professional development for those teachers. I'm just kind of wondering what the logistics of that are. If I did my math correctly, it's 63 hours of training, and I'm pretty sure, I don't know if everybody, all the EL teachers and the instructional specialists are expected to go through all 63 hours. Is this over a period of 5 years? Is this something where it's broken down by different departments that does different kinds of professional development? So it's just a lot of professional development, which is important professional development. I'm just kind of wondering how that rolls out.
Thank you for the question. The QTEL training is actually the core training that we use for all of our ESL teachers, our English learner teachers, as a part of their stipend acquisition. It is unique to the different levels, elementary, middle, and high, and then it is also unique to the different core content. So you will see a variety of offerings. You will also see in the description that it is a virtual offering this summer of both synchronous and asynchronous opportunities for our learners to align with kind of the conversations we've had previously about professional learning. This summer, we are working with our teachers in an environment that mirrors what they may be expecting to deliver their own instruction for students moving forward. So while there is a number of different options, it's not all options for all teachers. We are trying to customize that training for the specific content or level the teachers are teaching.
Thank you. I appreciate that clarification.
Okay. Again, questions concerning consent agenda items. District 7 trustee Norman Roberts, do you have any questions?
No questions, President Ramos.
Okay. District 8 trustee Ana Luevanos.
No questions, President Ramos.
Okay. District 9 trustee Ashley Paz.
I have one question. Regarding the AP exam fees, a few years ago, the College Board waived those for all South Florida Great City Schools districts. have we ever received any benefit from that?
That's not $9. This is a fee that we have budgeted for on each year annually. Actually, we bring an item early on in the year to gain board approval to pay for AP exams for all of our students that may have completed the course and set for the exam. This is actually giving you the final dollar figure of what it would cost to us. But I am more than happy to look deeper into, and I don't know, I can have the conversation with David Johnson and Mike Ball to see if we have some history of being reimbursed from Council of Great City Schools, and happy to get that information back to the board.
Okay, yeah, it was, so it was the college board that was actually paying for it, not the council, but they had just waived them for essentially all big urban districts. So, but that was like, Toby, do you remember what year we went to Long Beach?
I would say 16.
Yeah, something like that. So I want to say it was like a five year thing. So, I don't know, but I can reach out to the council to find out maybe, I mean, if I am perfectly happy for us to pay for those fees so the students don't have to, but if we don't have to pay them, then that would be great too.
We can definitely repurpose those dollars if possible, but we want to make tweaks for that. I'm happy to do research on our end as well, but if you have any other information, we'll be happy to contact you to report.
Ashley, 2015.
Okay. I think that was all the questions on that one. I'm District 1 Trustee Jacinto Ramos Jr., and I don't have any questions, so we will, I will state that it is 6:13 p.m. The date is Tuesday, June 9, 2020. We will now recess and reconvene virtually for executive session as authorized by Chapter 551 of the Texas Government Code under sections 551.071, 0.072, 0.074, and 0.076. Colleagues, I will see you on the other link here in executive session. Six. Anticipating Trustee Jackson will join us here in a bit. I'm going to get us going. In accordance with the open meetings law, the board opened a meeting at 5:30 p.m. in a private video conference with the quorum present, recessed and reconvened open session virtually, adjourned regular session, then convened executive session, adjourned executive session, and now reconvened open session at 6:46 p.m. in the public virtual video conference with a quorum present. The trustees who are present virtually are Trustee Toby Jackson, able to join us? Looks like she's working on still joining us. Move on. District 3 Trustee Quentin Phillips.
Present.
District 4 District 4 and District 5 trustees were not able to join us tonight. District 6 Trustee Andar.
Present.
District 7 Trustee Norman Robbins.
Present.
District 8 Trustee Anaya Luevanos.
Present.
District 9 Trustee Ashley Paz.
Present.
And District 1 Trustee Jacinto Ramos Jr., and I am present. We'll move on to number 10, accepting consent agenda items. Do I have a motion accepting consent agenda items? Please state your name and your motion.
Ashley Paz, so moved.
We have a motion by
Norman Robbins, second. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. We have a second by Trustee Norman Robbins. Any discussion on consent agenda? And so just remind you to try to use the participants tab and the little raise your hand symbol, but just in case, I'm going to go through each trustee to make sure. District 2 Trustee Toby Jackson, any discussion? Still not on. District 3 Trustee Quentin Phillips.
No discussion.
District 6 Trustee Andar.
No discussion.
District 7 Trustee Norman Robbins.
No discussion.
District 8 Trustee Ana Luevanos.
No discussion.
District 9 Trustee Ashley Paz.
No discussion.
And I'm District 1 Trustee Jacinto Ramos Jr. I have no discussion. We will now move to vote. As I call your name, trustees, please say yes or no. District 2 Trustee Toby Jackson. Still not on. District 3 Trustee Quentin Phillips. I'm sorry, Toby did message on the box. Yes, she is here. District 3 Trustee Quentin Phillips.
Yes.
District 4 Trustee is not with us. District 6 Trustee Andar.
Yes.
District 7 Trustee Norman Robbins.
Yes.
District 8 Trustee Ana Luevanos.
Yes.
District 9 Trustee Ashley Paz.
Yes.
And I am District 1 Trustee Jacinto Ramos Jr. Motion passes 7-4 and 0 against. We will move on to, we will not need item number 11 because no items were removed from the consent agenda. So we will move on to 12A, action item, which is approved resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Fort Worth Independent School District regarding the District Racial Equity Committee Statement for Social Justice and the demanding of systemic racism. At this time, Trustee Quentin Phillips will read the resolution, which is also available in the posted agenda. You're up, Mr. Trustee Phillips.
Thank you so much, President Ramos, Superintendent Scribner, and colleagues on the board. It is absolutely my honor to be able to read this resolution today. Resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Fort Worth Independent School District. To be silent is to be complicit. Whereas the Fort Worth Independent School District Board of Trustees and Dr. Kent P. Scribner, Superintendent of Schools, have taken a bold stand against systemic racism and have worked tirelessly toward equity transformation at all levels. Whereas in February 2016, Superintendent Scribner introduced a new organizational chart to the Board of Trustees, introducing the Division of Equity and Excellence for the purpose of fighting against systemic racism directly. Whereas the board in February of 2016 approved the creation of the Fort Worth Independent School District Racial Equity Committee for the purpose of fighting against systemic racism directly. Whereas the Fort Worth Independent School District Racial Equity Committee has worked to end racism and inequality. And in that pursuit, the committee recommended to the board the adoption of the Fort Worth ISD Racial and Ethnic Equity Policy. The policy outlines institutional racism throughout our system and declares that the responsibility for addressing these disparities among students rests with the adults and not with the students. Whereas the board, in response to the recommendation, unanimously approved the Fort Worth ISD Racial and Ethnic Equity Policy, and whereas the board and the superintendent, when they see racism, they address it directly. When they hear words of prejudice, they speak up against them. When they learn of an act of intolerance, especially if it occurs on one of our campuses or in one of our classrooms, they confront the situation and take action with urgency and unity. It is therefore resolved that the board finds Fort Worth ISD, with over 83,000 students and more than 11,000 employees, has the power and the duty to be part of the solution to dismantle institutional racism on behalf of the children we serve in the community in which we all live. In furtherance of the pursuit of dismantling institutional racism and the mission of the Fort Worth Independent School District, which is to prepare all students for success in college, career, and community leadership, the board makes the following findings. First finding, the board adopts and endorses the statement prepared and issued by the Fort Worth Independent School District Racial Equity Committee, and I will read the statement as such. It begins by a quote from W.E.B. Du Bois The problem of the 20th century is the problem of the color line. We, the members of the Fort Worth Independent School District Racial Equity Committee, are horrified, outraged, and saddened by the recent murders of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and other Black citizens in our country in recent weeks, including Fort Worth's own, Tatiana Jefferson. While certain groups see law enforcement as members of society that pledge to protect and serve, communities of color have had numerous traumatic experiences that have been historically ignored. Police practices are deeply rooted in white supremacy, stemming from night patrols, slave patrols, and the Texas Rangers. These traumatic experiences impact every area of our Black community, including the school systems. 3 years ago, the Racial Equity Committee made a recommendation to the board that the Fort Worth Independent School District take a bold stand against systemic racism and work towards equity transformation at all levels. In response, the board unanimously approved the Fort Worth ISD Racial and Ethnic Equity Policy. The policy outlines institutional racism throughout our system and declares that the responsibility for addressing these disparities among students rests with the adults, not with the students. In this moment, we renew our commitment to the responsibility we have to the students and communities of color in the Fort Worth Independent School District. As members of the Racial Equity Committee, we will speak out against the perpetual white supremacy, systemic racism, and the anti-Blackness we observe and experience. The need for action to accompany our words is imperative. We will support our school district in conducting a full racial equity audit at every school and district-wide. This tool will be used by the Racial Equity Committee and Fort Worth ISD leadership to identify and eliminate systems, policies, and practices which perpetuate racism in our schools and community. We reaffirm our commitment to removing policies and practices that uphold white supremacy, ensuring that students and families in Fort Worth ISD know that we do and will continue to advocate for social justice and racial equity and restorative practices. At a time when trust in public institutions is rightfully questioned, we have a responsibility to ensure communities of color are heard and have trust in our school district. We will partner with the district to host community conversations and town hall meetings to discuss and develop solutions for racial inequities. Additionally, we continue to ensure we commit to ensuring that there is a space among students and staff to acknowledge community trauma and address their emotional health. We must provide time and resources to the social, emotional well-being of students, helping them to heal and cope with trauma. As members of the Racial Equity Committee, we have the privilege of exercising our voice with district leaders and decision makers on a regular basis. We also recognize that we have a duty to elevate the voices of all communities of color in the district. We understand that racial injustice is systemic and deeply rooted in the history of our country, but it must stop now. Attached to this is a pledge, the Fort Worth ISD Racial and Ethnic Equity Pledge. I pledge to take a stand in support of racial equity for all Fort Worth ISD students, families, and staff. I will listen first and seek to understand others' perspectives and experiences, even if it stands in direct contradiction to my own. I will examine my own biases and actively seek to change them. I will speak up when I observe situations of prejudice, racism, and the exploitation of any person on the basis of their race. I will reach out to those who are different from me in order to break down the walls that divide us. And I commit to honor and embrace diversity and treat individuals as I would hope to be treated. Additionally, the board officially adopts the Fort Worth ISD Racial and Ethnic Equity Pledge developed by the committee and asks everyone to do more. Take the pledge and help make Fort Worth ISD, the city of Fort Worth, the state of Texas, and the country a place where we're all equal. Thank you, President Ramos.
Thank you, Trustee Phillips. Am I to assume that you wanted to make the motion on this action item?
Again, absolutely my honor and privilege. And I do move that we accept this resolution.
Thank you. So we have a motion by Trustee. Go ahead.
This is Norman Robbins. I second.
Okay. Thank you, Norman. So we have a motion by Trustee Quentin Phillips to accept the resolution as presented. We have a second by Trustee Norman Robbins. Any discussion? I will call on individual trustees to give you an opportunity to speak on this item if you so choose. District 2 Trustee Toby Jackson.
No discussion. Thank you for reading and bringing it forward. Thank you.
Thank you. District 3 Trustee Quentin Phillips.
Only discussion is Black and brown students. We see you, we hear you, we love you, and we pledge to educate you equitably.
Thank you. District 6 Trustee Andar.
It's an honor to serve a district that values every student, regardless of race or ethnicity. It is an honor to serve this district.
Thank you. District 7 Trustee Norman Robbins.
No discussion.
District 8 Trustee Ana Luevanos.
No discussion.
District 9 Trustee Ashley Paz.
Just that I am very proud of Trustee Phillips and Chairman Phillips as the chair of our Racial Equity Committee, and that this pledge really and statement really did come and was created by the members of the Racial Equity Committee, and they it's just great to see bold and inclusive leadership. So thank you for everything that you've done, Q.
Thank you. And District 1 Trustee Jacinto Ramos Jr. And I will echo what all of my colleagues have said. Honored, proud, humbled, and amongst this super difficult time, I cannot put into words the work that this district has been doing and will continue to do. And thank you all for your bold leadership. We will now move to vote. And as I call your name, trustees, please say yes, no, or abstain. District 2 Trustee Toby Jackson.
Yes.
Thank you.
My apologies.
District 3 Trustee Quentin Phillips.
Yes.
District 6 Trustee Andar.
Yes.
District 7 Trustee Norman Robbins.
Yes.
District 8 Trustee Ana Luevanos.
Yes.
District 9 Trustee Ashley Paz.
Yes.
And I am District 1 Trustee Jacinto Ramos Jr. and I vote yes. The motion on this passes unanimously 7-4. 0 against. When we get to the final item of our agenda, my colleagues, it's the comments by board members or superintendent on current district activities and announcements. I will call on each trustee to see if you have any comments you'd like to make on district activities or announcements, and our superintendent in a bit. District 2 Trustee Toby Jackson.
No comments.
District 3 Trustee Quentin.
Thank you, President Ramos. Simply want to say, at a time when we've seen demonstrations, we've seen the community speaking up on behalf of Black lives. I'm very humbled and honored, and I love the fact that I have seen the people who have been leading to make sure that all people are treated fairly. The people that have been at the very forefront have been Fort Worth ISD students and Fort Worth ISD alumni. And it does my heart well, because I really do hope that we stick to our mission statement. And I hope that we really are grooming the next leaders, the people who are going to be willing to make sure that everything is inclusive for all people. And so it's been a great honor to be able to see that from all over our district and all over our city, particularly our students, our young people, stepping up to the plate and allowing their voices to be heard. And so just to them, a big thank you, to my colleagues here on the board and Fort Worth ISD admin team and campus principals. The beautiful thing that I noticed, already knew, and am very proud of, is that it didn't take this incident of life to be lost for us to get about the business of racial equity. I didn't have to call our superintendent to urge him to put a statement out. He was ready before I could even have a real conversation with him. And so I'm so proud, much like Trustee Dar said earlier, to serve a district like this where everyone's life already mattered, where we were already doing the work. And now what we know is this call to action is for us to intensify the work, not to get started, but just to go harder to make sure that everyone knows. So I'm really grateful to each one of you. And simply just as a Prairie View alum, I just definitely want to say thank you, Sandra Bland, for your life, because you are a catalyst to this. And I want to say, George Floyd, your life absolutely mattered. And look how you changed the world. And to Tatiana Jefferson, as a native of Fort Worth, just know that you brought this home for us in ways that no one could truly imagine. So thank you all for this time, this resolution, and I'm very pleased with I know the direction we're going to go in as a district.
Thank you, Trustee Phillips. District 6, Trustee Endar.
Thank you, President Ramos. One of my greatest joys of serving as a trustee is the opportunity to celebrate good things that are going on in the district. And I received an email from Ms. Thomas, who is the principal at Wedgwood 6th Grade Center, that was from an email from a parent. And in this email, the parent uses words such as, "It was a great decision to be a part of the Wedgwood 6th grade academic family. Your team yielded great concern, encouragement, and genuine authenticity when it came to my daughter's well-being and her overall school experience. There is a cohesive approach with resolution and execution while maintaining the integrity and values of the school. She is grateful for their acts beyond the call of duty that helped her daughter feel welcome at Wedgwood 6th Grade Center. She always felt listened and valued and understood. There was a sense of great community. She's grateful for the teachers, the genuine teachers that were assigned to the school, and also for the after-school program. She concludes her email with, "Greatness is birthed out of the smallest spaces, and your efforts are going to take my daughter to great places for many years to come. You guys will live in our hearts forever." She specifically mentions Miss Austin, Miss Bowers, Miss Bailey, Mr. Bell, Mrs. Scholar, Miss Garcia, Miss Lanzer, Miss Mendiola, Miss Aguilera, Coach Reitz, Coach Alverson, Mrs. Jones-Wilson, Miss Jones, Mrs. Gardner, Mr. Perez, Miss Aiken, Mr. Prather, Miss Phillips. I am quite certain, I think my internet just went out. Dadgummit.
We can hear you.
Okay. Well, I am frozen and you all are frozen on my screen. But what I am certain is that this student did not have that many teachers. She had 8 teachers. And yet this is a very lengthy list of people who impacted her child's life. And we are reminded that education is a team sport. And I am thankful that Ms. Thomas, the principal at Wedgwood 6th Grade Center, fosters a culture of team efforts and team goals and team accomplishments, and that this child and many other children are better because they are students at Wedgwood 6th Grade Center. So thank you very much, Ms. Thomas. Thank you to all the teachers at that campus. I am thrilled to have received such an email.
Thank you, Trustee Dar. Next, District 7, Trustee Norman Roberts.
Thank you, President Ramos. I would like to thank Sherry Breed and her staff and all those that helped put together the racial equity panel discussion last week. I thought it was excellent. As I think I've said before, what I believe to be the missing element in the success of our students has been a lack of our approach to racial equity. And I look forward to us working with a sense of urgency to make sure that our racial equity programs are implemented as rapidly as possible. And I just want to thank them for pushing us forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Robbins. District 8, Trustee Ana Luevanos.
Thank you, President Ramos. I'm very honored and proud to serve this diverse world and this diverse district on these times. We communities of color are afraid, but I'm glad we have our voices, our leaders out there speaking for all the students across the district. I have a few people call me and they were concerned of this current situation we're living. But I'm glad we serve this diverse world, and I'm encouraged to see what we can do to better our students in the near future. So thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Lebanon. District 9 Trustee Ashley Paz.
Yes, I'd like to echo everything that everyone has said regarding the resolution, and also reiterate what Trustee Robbins said about the webinar that was put on by the Division of Equity and Excellence this last week. I just learned that they have been doing these weekly, and they will continue to be doing them weekly. And the one this week is actually featuring student voices. So that'll be another great one to listen in on. And it's kind of on the same note, just throw kudos to our restorative practices department. They have been on Facebook Live a couple of times a day, just doing different, teaching different strategies and engaging in conversations with people online and on Facebook. And they have just done an incredible job this school year. I don't know if they'll continue to do that over the summer, but they have gotten me out of bed in the morning. So thank you to that department.
Good deal. Thank you, Trustee Paz. Superintendent Dr. Kent Scribner.
Yes, thank you. First, I just want to thank this board, not only for tonight and your passage and creation of the resolution, but for all of your support, starting back in 2016 when we established the creation of the Equity Division. It's a privilege to serve this board and know that we and our leadership team are prepared to put these words into action with that sense of urgency that you talked about. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Scribner. My final comments for tonight is similar to what I mentioned earlier. I am really humbled that to be part of a board and be here in a time that, much as like Trustee Phillips said, we are not reacting. For one of the first times since I've been a part of this board, we have been on the front end, and we have been unapologetic about being on the front end. I'll speak for what's true for me in I-Statement. I went around the state and I went around the country pushing for anti-racism mentality. We've often said that saying I'm not a racist or saying that I'm not participating in racism is definitely not enough, that we had to engage in being anti-racist. And so doing that since 7 years ago when I got on this board, and watching this board progress and move in a direction that we have, and it's now as if a real awakening is happening around the country. I don't have to sit here and apologize or make excuses for inaction. We have been extremely active on this topic, and a resolution is just another addition to what we're doing. Having an entire division that genuinely is engaging in the work, having a board that has been doing the work, having a superintendent who can speak courageously and probably the first in the state, and do so in a manner that is not divisive, yet speaking truth to power, is pretty phenomenal. So I am proud to say that I am part of the Fort Worth ISD family and community, and the Fort Worth Independent School District has not only been leading locally, statewide, but even nationwide. And that what we've said and what's made people uncomfortable for 7 years, it's a day that probably is more validating today, that the entire country and really the entire world is in an uproar, and as it should be. So grateful to have leaders like you all to push forward. So I look forward to the conversations as they expand. I look forward to having conversations about law enforcement and the role in our schools. I look forward to the conversations of adding support systems in our campuses. As I heard Dr. Scribner on a televised newscast today, leading bravely there, and I also heard our friend and colleague Miguel Solis, who said it was just a couple of months ago that we were asking for more law enforcement in our school campuses because of shootings and safety. So I know that our board will have a balanced conversation about what that looks like, but also be super mindful that young people, we say they're our priority, and we will continue to show that they're our priority. And not to forget our amazing educators who are in those classrooms and the support that they need. With that, my friends, that's my final comments. Looks like there are no other comments. The time
But
is.
President Ramos, if I could just briefly, Trustee Robbins did it already, but I do just really want to reiterate to Sherry Breed, the Division of Equity and Excellence, all of those people over there are complete rock stars. This is their hard work. Just a round of applause for me. I love you. You guys do amazing. So seriously, we respect you tremendously. Excellent job.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that, my colleagues. With no other comments, the time is 7:13 p.m. and this meeting is now adjourned. Everyone stay safe. We'll see you soon.